everyone. Welcome to our first episode of Royal Reality Podcast. My name is Monica Suyo, and I'm the Director of Recruitment and Community Engagement from Cristo Rey OKC. In this first time, I have my wonderful guest here, Miss Patricia Chavez-Anaya, who is our mental health counselor in Cristo Rey. Welcome, Patricia.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
How are you doing
about
today?
Talking. I love talking.
I know that you do. And today we're going to talk about an important topic. It's going to be about mental health in our youth. Such an important topic. I would like that you tell us before we start to talk about it, about your role in Cristo Rey. What are your responsibilities? How you work with our students, families, and faculty?
Glad to do so. Well, this is actually my first year at Cristo Rey. I've come from private practice and working in other mental health agencies and a teaching profession, the university. The timing was perfect for me to land at Cristo Rey. I'm very happy there. Our role, myself and my colleague, is to support the students at Cristo Rey, mental health-wise, social, emotional, the whole package. And actually, it's pretty exciting that Cristo Rey sees the importance of mental health in that for 250 plus students, there are 2 licensed professional mental health counselors, which is almost unheard of, really. When I came from Oklahoma City Public Schools in a middle school, there were almost 1,000 students, and I was the only therapist.
Wow. So we can say that we are blessed to have two mental counselors.
Well, that's what I say anyway. But the fact that they put that as a priority and understand the importance of it really says a lot about the care and the support that Cristo Rey has for the students that are in their school.
And I think that's key for our students because we keep saying that we take care of our students as a whole. We not only focus on their academics, but also we focus for them to go to college, support them through that process, but also we take care of them regarding their social emotional health.
Absolutely. And you can't really separate them.
No.
I think we try to do that just because organizationally that's how our departments are set up. But Cristo Rey recognizes that they are all intertwined, and it makes a huge difference in terms of working with the student and seeing them as a whole person, and that there's various parts to that student that we need to attend to.
That's true. And like you said, we all work together to support our students. And yes, we will talk a little bit later more about how our parents can reach out to you or how our faculty also can work with you. But I think that let's start about talking about this important topic. Why do you think it's important to discuss about mental health among our youth?
Well, I think it's important to talk about mental health in general because there are so many misconceptions when we speak the words of mental health. People have different ideas what that includes and what it means. If you look at it in terms of ourselves as a whole person, and we're made up of different parts, we have our physical, and we have our mental, spiritual, emotional. We're made up of different parts. And so when we talk about mental health, we have to understand, number one, what are we really talking about? It includes so many things, our emotional health. It also includes things about, anxiety, depression, all kinds of things that get in our way. And so we need to understand that it's as important as going to the physician and finding out what's wrong, what's ailing you, what's hurting, what are the symptoms. The same is true for mental health. And so thankfully, there's been a surge in understanding about what mental health is, and there's campaigns now that educate the public about mental health. Now, when it comes to youth, a very special category in many, many ways. One, just because they are in a stage of development that is very crucial. They're very vulnerable. They're going through puberty. They're trying to find out who they are and where they're going, and so many things. A lot of confusion, a lot of emotional changes, physical changes. And you add to that COVID-19, which affected everybody, but in particular the youth who are still not developmentally in a place to handle something like what we went through. Even the adults, we all struggled with it as well. So it just kind of compounds things and makes things a bit more challenging for you. So their symptoms are becoming more and more evident. And we see it primarily in schools, to tell you the truth, because that's where they spend most of their time. And teachers and those that are around them can see some of that manifesting itself in the classroom or in their behavior among their peers. So addressing mental health among youth is really important, because if it's not taken care of, it just keeps growing and getting worse. And then in adulthood, then we've got mental health problems that have become worse.
That's true. And something that you said that I will agree with you is that mental health should be a common topic.
Yes.
You know, in the same way, like we go to the doctor when we have a cold or a flu or the stomach flu, etc. I think it should be common for us as a parent or just as a regular, person to go to for therapy, to go and consult with, a mental health counselor, and especially for our youth who is a vulnerable population.
Mm-hmm.
And, and for them, I know that they are more aware, definitely, about mental health and different issues or problems that they overcome. But also, I think that we need to avoid any misconceptions. Can you tell us a little bit about misconceptions about mental health?
Well, what we think of mental health, where our mind goes immediately to somebody on the street, because that's chronic mental illness. And mental health is a wide, broad,
yes, a broad topic,
spectrum.
Yes.
But that's what we think. Mm-hmm. And so mental health, there isn't anybody, I'll go so far as to say there's not a person that doesn't need, at one point in their life or another, or maybe several times, mental health counseling, therapy, to get them through something that's difficult or they're unable to manage or go through by themselves. There's nothing wrong with going to a therapist. In fact, I always tell people, the ones that go to therapy, they're the smartest, the most intelligent, because they recognize they need some help. But there is a misconception. I know even with, for example, some of our parents, they come from different generations where a lot of the misconceptions. Yes. And so when their daughter or son comes to them with, I'm depressed or I'm having anxiety or whatever,
or an anxiety attack,
they go, oh, ya cállate. You can get over it. They minimize it, don't understand that it's a real mental health issue. And so it's really difficult to overcome some of those incorrect ideas. And so educating people on mental health is important. Correct that information, those ideas that's been passed down. And if you go to a therapist, then you're crazy. The only crazy people go to therapy, and that's not true.
I think that it's key that our families and our students being well informed, like you said, what is mental health. And also it is important what you said, prevention. So if we take care of our youth now, like you said, then the problem doesn't get bigger. They can be more successful, not only in high school, just for the rest of your life.
Correct.
So yes. So I think that we always have to be informed. We always have to be open to new ideas. And like you said, everybody or anybody needs help at some point.
Yes.
And especially regarding their own mental health. And we shouldn't be labeled people as crazy or minimizing those symptoms like anxiety or depression.
Those are very common. And they say, well, just get over it.
That's true.
That's unfortunately what is said.
So you already talked a little bit about depression and anxiety, but I would like that you expand a little bit more about it. And also, what are the most common mental health issues currently in our youth?
Well, as mentioned before, anxiety and depression, suicide ideations, meaning getting so depressed that they want to end their life or feel like they want to end their life. We have self-destructive behavior, the cutting, for example, or not eating, or eating and then purging, which is eating disorders. Those would be probably the most common among our youth. And that's what I'm pretty much seeing and have seen here the last few years.
Wow. And can you explain us a little bit about, like we talked about before, how we would define depression or anxiety, from a common feeling down,
Right.
or not feeling well or feeling nervous?
Very important. That's part of the educational process. Of course, you're going to get nervous before the basketball game or before you talk to people. There's a difference between nervous and being anxious to where it becomes a chronic condition. And anxiety, again, is a spectrum. And it can go from general anxiety to all the way to serious obsessive compulsive behavior and excessive worrying, and become where it overcomes your life and you can't function. And that's probably the key for any of these, is that where it impacts your ability to function in daily life. Depression is probably the one another one actually that's misunderstood. We have situational depression, which happens as a result of something that's gone wrong or of loss, for example. But then we have chronic depression, which is what I like to call it a brain disorder, but not quite the same thing. It's just that the chemicals in the brain that produce a sense of well-being and are not properly functioning. So you can do a lot of things to try to make yourself happy, but it's not happening upstairs here. And so antidepressants are then called for. And the antidepressants work with the serotonin. And it's not like you take the pill and you're going to all of a sudden, oh, I feel so happy, 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 happy. It doesn't work like that either. And most people, and sometimes parents believe this when we talk to them about considering antidepressants for their child, they believe that it's going to make them sleepy, lazy, lethargic, or get out of fuera de onda. It doesn't. That's not what happens. That's not how it works. In fact, when you take an antidepressant, you don't feel anything because it's doing its thing in your brain chemistry.
So what I'm listening from you is that there is not only a misconception about mental health issues, but also about medication.
Correct. Big time.
Big time, right? You talk about anxiety, depression, but you also talk about eating disorders. Do we still have we see anorexia, bulimia situations among our youth?
Yes. And it's probably one of the most undetected for a variety of reasons, because the young people who are engaged in this or are suffering from this, better said, do a real good job of covering it up. And so this is where families have to be paying attention for changes in eating and make sure, that something's not going on that shouldn't be going on. So, yeah, it's one that's the most hidden and difficult to diagnose, but it hasn't changed. No.
And I think that, many generations ago, it was an issue as well. And I think that nowadays, like you say, if we're talking about self-image, probably, some of our youth are like taking care of their weight, but sometimes they go to extremes. And that's when probably we need to see as parents, you know, what's going on. Now, regarding self-destructive behavior, can you explain a little bit more of that? How parents can be aware of those situations?
Wow, that's a tough one too. The most common that we have encountered over the last several years has been the cutting. And that's a tough one because it's easy to cover up with your clothes or, it's secretive. A lot of times it's a friend that will tell the parent, and that's how it's discovered. But it's another one that's really difficult to find out about as parents. And sometimes a nurse will notice it. Sometimes, like I said before, a friend. And that's something that's very difficult to find out about, diagnose, and to treat. when we use the word self-destructive, it's a very broad term.
Yes.
And self-destructive behavior can include many, many things. We can even put into that category substance abuse, hurting yourself, like cutting, and just doing things that are self-harm, not good for you. There's so many different ways people choose to do that. Again, going back to I'm not worth it, I'm not good enough, self-concept, self-esteem, self-worth, all those things that at this age are very, very important. And it doesn't take much to put somebody in a place where they're doubting all that and very confused. So it's a very touchy, very important area that we need to be paying attention to.
Thank you, Patricia. Patricia, last week, the CDC said something important about mental health regarding our youth. And I think this is important for everybody to be aware about these statistics, that in informing all of us that we need to take care of our youth. Can you explain us a little further about it?
Okay. CDC conducted a survey among high school students all across the United States right after COVID. So some of the data is post-COVID, although they will be coming up with an update this spring, either March or April, which will be very interesting to see and compare. Mm-hmm. But a couple of the key findings are the following: that risky sexual behaviors are decreasing, but so are important protective factors like condom use, HIV testing, and STD testing. So the whole concept of sexual health, we know our youth are sexually active, not all of them, of course, but many. Mm-hmm. And so the idea of sexual health is important. A lot of our students don't know anything about transmitted diseases. For example, condoms, yeah, they know about it, but do they use them, So there's a lot that needs to be done in this area to prevent diseases or pregnancy.
And in this case, education is key, like you
Absolutely.
said. What are the other ones?
The next one is substance abuse. Now, let's define substance abuse. That includes alcohol, which we don't sometimes forget to include, alcohol and other drugs. Well, let's just go back. Tobacco, alcohol, and other drugs is the term we have used now for the past 20 years because we have to include all that. We say substance abuse and we think pills or marijuana only. It's a lot more than that. So when we say substance abuse, we need to think about it in those terms. It's generally decreasing.
Okay.
But still way too high in terms of where we are at in terms of the use and abuse of substance. They call it substance use / abuse.
Because now I'm guessing people are more open to use this substance at early age. And when I say open, doesn't mean that is right.
Right.
And I know that some people probably will have the misconception that drinking alcohol at early age doesn't cause any problem, but I think that are totally wrong. Can you tell us just a little bit if they are consuming like either marijuana, vaping, or alcohol, how it affects your brain or your body in general?
Oh boy. Our brains are not fully developed until we're in our middle 20s. And so this age is extremely vulnerable. The vaping thing, wow, there are so many different chemicals in those vapes that mess up the brain. And nobody's talking about that. Nobody warns these children or youth about that. And so it's just very, very dangerous. And it doesn't even matter what's in the vape. Sometimes I don't even know. They put all kinds of different things in there, but the chemicals that are added are very, very dangerous.
Okay. What are the other ones, Patricia? Because honestly, you're bringing such important information.
The other
two areas.
Oh, yes, of course. Okay. Experiences of violence, including sexual violence, which has been a big thing for a long time now, about 10 years, not declining. And in many cases, it's increasing. So the combination of substance use and abuse and violence is a strong correlation between those two. And so it's no wonder that we're seeing that happen more and more in such an early age, 14, 15-year-old girls or vice versa. becoming victims or participating in violence.
And when we say violence, we're talking about group violence, also teen dating violence.
All of it. And then it's important to note sexual violence. That sometimes gets overlooked. We think violence is slapping or hitting or pushing and that kind of thing. But the sexual violence is the one that we need to be paying very close attention to, because that has become more and more prevalent. It's pretty scary because our kids are engaging in sex. And you add the elements of substance abuse or substance use. And right now we're talking all kinds of different substances, street drugs. And we've got the fentanyl coming across the border, and young people are exposed to so many different types of drugs. It's very scary.
And the last one?
Poor mental health and suicidal thoughts and behaviors are increasing for nearly all groups of youth, meaning it doesn't matter what race or anything, that is on the rise. And so for us as therapists, people that work with the kids or youth rather, we want to pay attention. We want to use some screening instruments to see who is vulnerable, who's even having those kind of thoughts. So we want to engage with the students with those types of assessments or surveys to identify students who are at risk.
Wow. And like you said, we are definitely curious to see the following survey, because statistics and data are so important, especially for all our mental health counselors that are working with our youth in every school or outside of their school. Mm-hmm. So you talk about that it is difficult for our teenagers to deal with their own identity. It's difficult for them to deal with the pressure, the social pressure, the pressure that they have at school or at home. So now my question will be, how do mental health issues impact the life of our youth?
In every possible way. Mm-hmm. Because mental health issues, disorders that go unattended to continue to manifest and cause problems long term. And it gets more complicated, more destructive, more problematic. Affects their relationships, peers, later on in life, those things that they've experienced, they take into a relationship, they haven't dealt with their own things, and problems happen in the relationship, in families, at school, their academics.
Wow.
When I see students, even though I'm looking at their mental health, we also include a review of their grades, because you can't separate the two.
Right.
They go hand in hand. So the youth that we see on a pretty regular basis, we're interested in knowing what's at the root, what's behind the kinds of things that they're experiencing.
So in the cases that, like you said, since we are all working together as a team to support our youth, how can parents reach out to you, or how a teacher can reach out to you if we see that a student is being vulnerable or suffering, in any way in their social emotional health?
Well, we have a referral form that's available to the teachers, and it also comes out in the weekly bulletin that the principal sends out to all students, parents, staff. Everybody gets a copy.
Every Sunday, yeah.
Every Sunday. And so there is a referral form that you can click, and it's a real simple click, 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 click. That's what I like. Those forms the best. And also, other students can refer a fellow student. And that's already happened this year. I've had a couple of referrals from their peer. So they submit the form, and it comes directly to us, where we follow up, see the student, and take it from there, determine what their needs are going to be.
And now let's talk about, I already understand that our families can reach out to you, or the peers, the fellow students, as well as teachers. Now, can you explain us a little bit more how you work with teachers?
Okay, yes. Well, teachers, meaning that they are with the students, are key, because they can observe and see some of that mental health challenges, issues present themselves in behavior in the classroom. So we want to support the teachers in educating them what to look for, and support them in how to address some problematic behaviors in the classroom, so that they are more effective with a student or a group of students that are having trouble.
Thank you. I know that your work probably is very valuable, and we appreciate that. We are blessed to have, like you said, 2 social emotional counselors, different than a regular public school where you have to see 1,000 students. So
Yeah.
can you explain a little bit further about the process? We submit, if I am a mom and I see that my child needs help, I submit a form, and then how it goes the process?
Well, we set up an appointment with the student and do an assessment, a clinical interview, and then we determine whether, if there really is something going on, then we certainly come up with a plan. Is it going to be a short term that we can address at school, 6 to 8 sessions? It kind of depends. Or is it something that needs to be addressed with an outside agency that's more longer term? The advantage of us being at the school is, are many advantages.
Yes.
Number one, just the availability of the students being at the school, and accessible to us, and we're accessible to them, because sometimes going to an agency can be cumbersome, confusing, frustrating, and a few other things. So the fact that we can provide services on campus with students is a real advantage. So at whatever point we see the student, we will get, if the parent made the referral, we'll get back with the parent with our findings or our assessment and discuss what our plan is with that student. Same thing with the teacher or staff person that's referred a student. We want to get back to them to see, well, this is what we found and this is what we're going to do. So that follow-up is important.
And I think that is key, the follow-up. So now it is, I guess, at free of cost?
Yes. Cristo Rey has recognized and valued the importance of mental health at school. So it's no cost to the parents.
I know that we provide individual services to our students. What about if a family will request like a family therapy? Is that available for our students?
It is on a limited basis, and it kind of case by case. There was a family during parent-teacher conferences that requested family. And so I'm going to be following up with them to try to set up meeting time, because at the end of that conference, it was the dad that asked, which is not usual. It's usually the mom. So that was encouraging. So yes, we can provide it. Of course, it depends on availability and logistics and all of that, trying to work through that. But more than happy to work with families.
And I guess the services is provided during our school hours. Anything outside of school hours?
Well, for family, that probably would be the case. So because parents work. So I haven't got that far with this family in particular to determine what we're looking at in terms of the hour.
Okay,
but that certainly is a possibility. Yes.
It still is available, our services, not only for our students, but also for the families.
Yes.
And now let's talk about families. So how can parents help? If they see that your students are struggling, they see any change of attitude or behavior, how can they help?
Well, pay close attention. Pay close attention. To what extent is it continuing? Stay in communication with that student. Find out. Most of the time, the student's not going to want to talk to parents or won't express their feelings or what's going on. So in that case, a referral to a counselor might be good. Now, sometimes the student doesn't want to go to a counselor, but that would be the best case scenario. If you're noticing dramatic changes in behavior and things that don't seem normal or out of sync, and is it just for a couple of days? Is it for a week? Or has it been going on for a couple of months? Then it's probably a good idea for an intervention.
So what I'm, guessing from everything that you are saying is that communication is key between parents and students.
Absolutely.
We have to always be observing, Be good observer about anything, any change of behavior, any change of their habits. What else? Relationship, connecting with our student also must be important, right?
Very, very. And it's hard. It's hard at this age. They don't want to be connected. They don't want to talk to you sometimes.
That's true.
But we just can't give up. We just can't say, well, it's too much trouble. It's too much work.
Or it's a typical behavior of my teenagers.
Yes.
Sometimes we ignore vital signs.
Yes. It's. I can't emphasize that enough. Don't give up. Pay attention. Pay attention. Pay attention. And make every effort possible to connect, even if it's for 2 seconds, even if it's a real quick text message, or even if they don't respond, you keep talking, you keep expressing. It communicates so many different things. Number one, I'm of value. My parent cares about me. I'm important. Maybe they don't think they're so important. Maybe they don't even love themselves that much. But as a parent, that's vital.
That's true. And I think that sometimes parents tend to give up. But like you said, we need to keep that communication open with them. We need to use any possible way to communicate with them, a text message, a note, an email, because they're in social media a lot. And they listen to us. And sometimes we think they don't listen to us, but just tell them constantly, I love you, you're worthy, we value everything that you do, how great you are in anything. I think that sometimes we forget as parents that they are listening to us, but they're just not telling us, Mom, I feel the same, or that, yes, thank you.
It's not always reciprocal. So we just need to realize that that's how it is, and accept it for the time being. Don't give up, and keep going. Keep doing it. Pay attention. Let them know that you care.
Thank you, Patricia. Before we go, any message you want to give to our youth, if you want to look at the camera?
Yes. When you're struggling, whether it's academically, whether it's with your family, whether it's your peers, whether it's with your emotions, seek out help. There's help around. If it's an adult, if it's your parent, if it's a teacher, if it's at school, all schools have counselors. So reach out to them and talk to them. And let them know that you're struggling. There's help. Don't be afraid to ask for it.
Thank you, Patricia. We ran out of time. This was such an important topic, but I want to remind everyone that this is our first episode of our podcast here at Cristo Rey Royal Reality, but we will have a second one coming up soon. And this same podcast, Patricia, is available in Spanish. So please remember to follow us on our social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and especially our website, that CristoReyOKC.org. And if you need help, don't forget to contact us, our school, by phone, by email, and we will immediately take care of you and your student. Thank you so much. Thank you, Patricia, again. Thank you to everyone that are following us. And please remember, stay safe. Bye.